We're just waiting a few minutes to the actual time arrives. We've got a lot of people on Zoom, and we want to make sure we get them all loaded before we get started. So. Okay, it's 8 o'clock. I guess we've got everybody online that we're going to get, but all of you, I assume most of you have been here before. I know many of you through past adventures, but what we're going to do is open up here with a prayer. Chairman Green is going to offer a blessing, if you would.
Let us pray. Is it now we're praying? I do, Heavenly Father, as we come to do the state's business, may you guide us and direct us. And Father, we just thank you that we live in this state, and we pray, oh Father, the blessings upon the individuals that are here. And Father, guide us and direct us, and may we make the correct decisions, and the deliberations that come out of here are good for the people of the state of Georgia. Lord, be with us now, guide us and direct us in all things. In thy holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. So what we're going to do is call you if you've got the program in front of you. We're going to call it in order that they're listed. If you would, when you get ready, when you sit down and get ready to speak, if you'd tell everybody your name and who you represent so that the people online know who you are. I think we all know who you are, but and we're not going to go over everything that's in here. These cases where you got to give 6.8% to the retirement system or something like that, we don't need that. But anything that's new or anything that you're asking for specifically for your agency, I'm just going to go down the tracking sheet and try and get an explanation. I've been over this with several of you already, so I have a pretty good handle on it. But first, we're going to call the Supreme Court. It's on page 6 if you got a tracking document.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, members. My name is Mike Boggs. I am the presiding justice of the Supreme Court, and I have with me today the Chief Justice, David Namias, and our fiscal agent, Regina Jones. If you have any questions, thank you for the opportunity to present our FY or amended FY 22 budget. It is section 10, page 6 of your tracking sheet. I'll start on line 10.1.1. We're requesting funds to annualize daily allowance days and commute mileage for one additional justice who joined the court. We're asking on 10.1.2, as you just mentioned, we don't need to mention the employee retirement rate contribution increase. 10.1.3 is an adjustment to DOAS self-insurance programs. 10.14 is funds for adjustment to the Georgia State Trooper that's assigned to the Supreme Court. And lastly, for the pass-throughs and required amounts, 10.1.5 is to provide one-time funds for a newly appointed justice for moving costs and such. Those pass-throughs and required amounts comprise 1.3% of our overall ask. In addition, we are asking for restoration of operating funds that have been cut in FY21 in the amount of $205,347. And then lastly, we have been asked to include, given the governor's statements concerning pay raises, we've been asked to amend our previously amended budget to include a increase for a $5,000 pay increase for all full-time benefit eligible state employees. That's included in our amended request as well, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my remarks. I'm happy to answer any questions you or the committee may have.
I've got a couple of questions. The first one about the trooper, you know, and we're going to run into this time and again, but he's going to get a 5% pay raise too. So we're going to have to recalculate that based on what his salary will be. She probably already got that.
Is that, we included that already?
Sorry. We did, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Now I'm being told this amount includes an adjustment for that.
So, for the 23 budget, we did include.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
And the other thing, the restoration of funds, we were restoring funds for a lot of things. And, you know, basically this money is going to be for the fourth quarter. And I'm not certain about exactly how much it takes to operate the Supreme Court, but $205,000 for 1 quarter.
Yes.
Restoration.
Yes, sir. The bulk of what we're asking for in the 205, in fact, I think 56% of that is for IT maintenance, things that we put off during the cuts. Those include that we haven't purchased laptops for the judges. We have not purchased scale nodes. The scale nodes, which are the servers where the data is stored at the Supreme Court, are on life cycles, and we have 6 nodes. Life cycles for each of those is 5 years, and we stagger them out. But 4 nodes are due for upgrades. We've got switches and other IT things that are beyond my comprehension that are required to be upgraded too. We would appreciate anything you can do there. We understand your point, but the bulk of that is IT upgrades that had been previously delayed.
Chairman Green.
Thank you. Look at 10.1.1. I thought we had taken care of that, or was that?
We added a new justice that lives
Oh,
beyond 50
okay.
miles.
So we've added.
Justice Colvin joined the court,
Okay.
and so that's to adjust for her.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Anybody else got any questions? Anybody on the committee? Okay, we certainly appreciate it. That
Thank you,
was
Mr. Chairman.
that was really pretty rapid.
Right. We were told. Thank you.
The business court. And I think we all got the same tracking sheet, but yeah, it's on page 1 of our tracking sheet, but I heard somebody say a different page for the Supreme Court. So I don't know if we all have the same one.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Morning.
I have with me our clerk of court, Angie Davis. My name is Walt Davis. I'm the judge of the statewide business court. Do you have a preference? Leave this on, take it off?
Not when you're speaking, you can take it off. We like to have everybody maintain them in you know, there's a requirement supposedly in all the committee meetings in the chambers that people wear masks, but certainly when you're going to speak, it inhibits your ability.
A little bit. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present this morning. Our section is 5.2, specifically 5.2.
That's correct.
5.1 through 5.27. 5.21 through 5.24 relates to salary adjustments for the staff of the Supreme Court, including annual leave payouts for our term clerks that we did not budget for, that accrued to roughly $10,000. That's 5.21.
Weren't there two
There are
that have
two.
left?
And I was going to give you a little bit of background on that. We don't have any back office staff. We contract our administrative function to the AOC, and our IT is provided by the Supreme Court. So in terms of front-facing sort of service-oriented staff, we have 7, which would include Ms. Davis and myself. We share a single judicial assistant. On the court side, I have 2 term clerks that cycle through 1 year at a time, in addition to staff attorney. And then Ms. Davis herself has 1 employee. So my staff attorney doubles as a sort of court administrator of sorts. And Ms. Davis, while maybe for 23, may ask for an entry-level position. I think what we're trying to do here is we're doing more with less, and our staff has taken on more as we are now in our 2nd year of operation. So that's 5.22 through 5.24. 5.25 is a line item for media subscriptions.
What, are they legal?
They are, sir.
I mean, no AJC or,
No, sir. The Wall Street Journal, New York Times that I read, AJC goes through me.
just
These are,
being certain.
yes, sir. So I don't pass that back through. 5.26 and 5.27 also requires just a little bit of background, and I will be brief. The statutory structure underlying the business court provides that jury trials will occur in the venue in which they could have otherwise occurred. So we are in our 2nd year of operation. We're starting to see the maturation of cases to the point where jury trials are requested. We have 1 scheduled for April. We have another slot for June. Now, with the business court and business court cases, when we eliminate the core issue or deal with the core issue or 2 in those cases, they tend to settle. Our hope would be that would be the case, but we do not have a line item in our budget for per diems, for the jurors, travel, things of that nature, jury summons. And so this is our best estimate in working with Ms. Davis's team to account for that, where there would otherwise be a shortfall. And best I can tell you is if we don't spend it, I will send you a letter and return it to you.
No, I was fully briefed on that. I understand exactly where you're coming from. And
5
with the
point,
next one too. I mean, I know that you have to go out and pick up documents and evidence, and
right.
It's only right that you be paid per diem and travel mileage for that. So,
Well, if you don't want me to speak to that one, I will
Well,
end my presentation.
I've been pretty well briefed on these things. Some of the other people may not have, and certainly I welcome your opportunity to speak.
I learned a long time ago as a trial lawyer that when the judge tells you he's good, then you stop talking.
Well, I'm not much of a judge. In fact, I've been usually sitting on the other side of these in most of the courtrooms I've been in.
So I will leave it there and answer any questions
Okay.
anyone has.
Any questions? Chairman Werkheiser? You got a question? Sure you're all aware when you Zoom, sometimes these things don't work sufficiently as you'd like.
Hey, sorry, I typed it. I just want to know, since now that we've had a full season, I know the first year was abbreviated, just what kind of the scope of number of cases, just a very broad number of cases that y'all handle, since this is all kind of new to us.
Sure thing. We have 65 cases filed to date. We are about 1.5 years into our operation. We were averaging about 1 a week through the end of last year. We've slowed down just a tad. We have as you may recall, a statutory requirement to dismiss cases where the parties object to our jurisdiction. So we have, of those 65, we've lost about 35% of those in dismissing those. So of the remainder, that's roughly 35 to 40 that are increasingly active. There was a trend early on, and that's continued where we're seeing them from across the state. Would love to see a few more from down in your area. But we've got 25 counties across the state. About 95% of the cases we're getting are from small businesses ranging from neurosurgery practices to plumbers to hospitality. So the remaining 5, we've started seeing an uptick in some larger cases, from the battery plant up in Commerce to the nuclear plant, things of that nature. But our bread and butter right now is our fairly significant small business type cases. Hope that was
Thank you.
responsive to your question.
That's exactly what I wanted. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee members? Okay, we appreciate you coming today.
Thank you, sir.
Superior Court. Oh, you don't.
Good morning,
Sir.
How are you?
Morning. I'm good. How about you?
Doing good. Thank you. My name is Wade Paget. I'm the chairman or the president of the Council of Superior Court Judges. Along with me is the president-elect, Judge Art Smith. He is from Columbus. Judge Justy Hightower is here with us, as our executive director, Shannon Weathers, our budget director, Charles Miller, and Dr. Will Simmons, who is the head of the DCAs. Our budget's a little bit strange in that it has 3 parts. We have the judges part, the council or the council office part, and then we have the district court administrators who also fall within our budget. So there are 10 of the 10 districts. There's a superior court in every county. Every county is in a circuit. Every circuit is in a district. And so we have 10 of those districts throughout the state for our 50 circuits. So in our particular budget, I think we are section 9 of the tracking sheet. I've got it as page 5.
Page 5.
Okay. So in section 9.2.1, and this was a question that came from House Budget Office as well. They were asking about, was there a need or what level of funding DCAs or our district court folks would have from the ARPA funds? And the answer is none. We were told very clearly they were not included and not to be included in the ARPA applications. Therefore, during the legislative session in 2020, that program was cut about 11%, which was almost all of their operating budget. In many circuits, particularly rural circuits, they serve as the lifeblood, getting people paper, pens, and computers and things that they need. And they had virtually no money to do that. So what that number represents, the $37,000, is the amount that we are asking for 1 quarter, what would be a restoration of only 1 quarter of what would otherwise have been their budget prior to the 2020 session. The other thing may be a pass through that you had said we can kind of not spend a whole lot of time on. 9.3.3. That is a pass through that is a function of a Senate Bill 176 that passed about 2 years ago, that said if you ever hire a retiree, you have to pick up the employer and employee side of the contribution to ERS. And for whatever reason, the interpretation has been we have to pick that up even though they are earning in JRS. I'm not sure why, but that was the interpretation. That's simply a pass through.
And I don't really understand that.
I don't either.
I worked in state government for 43 years, and once you retire, you can't come back. You
And-
can come back and work, but you can't participate in the retirement system. Whatever your initial retirement is what
Colonel,
you-
I'd love to somebody to explain
Yeah.
it to me, but I just told us the way it is. And so we nod and move along. Let me address one more issue and then I'm going to turn it over to Judge Smith. The House Budget Office asked a question about what impact the employees that we have that are state positions, but that are technically hired by counties and state reimbursed on if there was to be a $5,000 raise per position. We have gone through those numbers. We have shared that with the House Budget Office already, but I will tell you that based upon what the governor's recommended budget compared to what we would need to include them would be about a shortfall during the amended budget of about $386,000. They did not pick those up when they were doing the calculations. And so we have provided that to Mr. Groom, and I think everything else is, if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer those. But why don't I turn it over to Judge Smith, because he wants to talk about the senior judge side, and then we'll both be here to answer any
And I
questions.
certainly have no resolution to that myself. You know, I've received a lot of questions from back home from judges about whether everybody else is going to get a 5% raise and teachers are going to get to 2%. It brings them up to 5%. Why are we being left out? So,
Well, we are prayerful that maybe we would be included. I understand those decisions are probably made at your level and higher, but we would respectfully request that we be included in that, in that process. But I'll turn it over to Judge Smith and let him get in front of the
Okay.
microphones. I'll slide over.
Chairman Hitchens and members of the committee, the subcommittee. I'm Art Smith. I'm a Superior Court judge in the Chattahoochee Circuit, which is basically Columbus and 5 surrounding counties. The portion of our budget that I've been asked to address is 9.3.1, additional funds for 3 senior judge days per active judge for the balance of FY22, basically 3 months to complete this fiscal year. By way of a little history, prior to COVID, each active judge had 15 senior judge days. In 2020, the General Assembly prudently reduced that sum about 94%, or $1,875,000, resulting in each active judge going from 15 days to 3/4 of 1 senior judge day per year. In FY21, the General Assembly saw fit to add money so that we were brought up to 5 senior judge days. We're asking for 3 additional senior judge days per active judge for, as I said, the balance of FY22, which would represent a cost to the state of $405,114.
are you having problems getting the senior judges to come back? I've heard in a couple of cases they've had difficulty.
I think now that there's a little better understanding of COVID and the variants,
Right.
some senior judges are willing to come back. We have not experienced a great difficulty in our circuit in obtaining senior judge days. ARPA funds can be used
Right.
for senior judge days, but I would just point out that only 21, well, there are 50 circuits, 27 circuits receive some ARPA funding. Only 21 of the 50 circuits received any ARPA money for senior judge days. The regulations dealing with ARPA are such that the funds are primarily to be used, or principally to be used, to clear a backlog of serious violent felonies that have accumulated during the COVID pandemic. And so the funds can't just be used for anything that the district or the circuit prefers. They have to use for permitted purposes.
Are you able to access any of the county ARPA funds that have any of them?
That varies by county, as you can imagine.
Sure.
And some counties have other ideas of how to use their money, but the funds that have been set aside for the courts, as I say, are intended to clear these serious violent felonies that have accumulated while we were not able to have in-person proceedings in the courtroom. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about.
Do we have any questions from the committee members?
Thank you. Thank you. Then
Uh,
moving to, if I may.
yeah,
I'm
we
sorry.
got a couple here, I think. Representative Holcomb.
Yeah, good morning, Judge Smith. Can you help me understand what the senior judges can do in terms of helping to resolve the backlog? What specific actions can they take?
A senior judge can do anything that an active judge can do, with the exception of handling a death penalty case. But in our circuit, what we're using the ARPA money for is to have two senior judges handle as many of the family violence, stalking matters, handle dockets for judges who are handling the serious felony cases, so that the 7 active, well, we're still short one judge, but when we have our new judge appointed, we'll have 7 active judges. We're focusing our time on these serious violent felony cases, and the senior judges are taking the other cases, non-jury, civil and criminal, but also can take jury trials in both civil, domestic, and criminal matters. Mr. Representative.
Okay. And coming in for just these limited periods of time is effective in terms of reducing caseload and workload, et cetera?
It is, because they can take over a judge's other cases on his or her docket and allow the active judge to focus on these cases. We've only been doing it now for a couple of weeks, but we found it to be very effective.
Okay, thanks.
Chairman Ballard.
Judge, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you here. I just had a question, as somebody who is paid through a grant, I was wondering if there was, because there is not a lot of uniformity with regards to the usage of senior judges. And I was wondering if there was, any thought to accountability with regards to the supplantation of county funds. Are we going to just replace county funds with state funds? And, kind of what the usage of senior judges, to actually move cases, instead of to move cases rather than, a judge gets 3 extra vacation days.
Well, that's a good question, Chairman Bellinger. As I said just a moment ago, senior judges can handle any case that I can handle as an active judge, save and except for a death penalty case. We have 2 judges in my circuit. I can't speak to every circuit in the state, and they're working. One judge works 3 weeks, and then the next judge works a week to give the first one a break, and then the first one comes back. And they're handling dockets so that the 6 of us who are on the bench in Chattahoochee are laser focused on the violent felonies, getting the pretrial motions heard and getting the cases lined up for jury trials. Impaneling a jury has been challenging, as I imagine you would appreciate, in that we have to maintain social distancing. And initially, when we started with with any jury trial after COVID, we experienced a reluctance of jurors to come in for fear that they would be exposed. But of course, when a subpoena goes out, someone to appear for jury duty, that's a little different than a retailer advertising a special and people making their own decision about where to go. Did I answer your question, Madam Chairman?
I think the answer is no. Is there any accountability that those judges are being used for that, rather than just giving the judge, extra time off, or using that time for something else? There's no kind of backstop. There's no supervision.
Well,
anything.
the chief judge of each circuit is really supervising the time of the senior judge, and we have to have faith that public officials are going to be good stewards of the public's money. And if we clear these backlogs, we won't have that need, but we just don't see the light at the end of that tunnel for quite some time. But the accountability is the professionalism of senior judges who don't want to waste state money, and also being accountable to the chief judge of the circuit.
Of course, we have a very divergent state, and I talk about what I personally experienced. When I was in represent Chatham and Effingham counties, and in Chatham County, we've got more judges than we have courtroom space, active judges. And then in Effingham, they can't seem to find senior judges who want to come help them. We got plenty of courtroom space, but then we don't have anybody to assist. So,
Yes, if there are no further
Chairman Green.
Thank you. Judge Smith, I'm a great supporter of senior judges in Southwest Georgia. We just have the docket is so backed up. It's so important for us to have senior judges, and we have some that are willing to come and do that work. I also want to ask about law clerks for the judges in some of these rural areas. We're really having a tough time attracting individuals to come and live in some of these. Can you respond to that?
Yes, sir. I don't know if this is still picking me up. So when in our next year's budget, we have included a request that the law clerks that we have be paid in line with what an assistant DA would make fresh out of school, what an assistant public defender would make fresh out of school, because we have experienced that same thing statewide. That we have very graciously through the budget process last year, every judge who needed one was going to have a staff attorney, law clerk, whichever way you want to call it. And a lot of them are are still unfilled because they cannot they can't attract any decent applicants. No disrespect to anybody who's out there, but a lot of people, when that money hit, they had already committed for the following year. And so this coming year, where it's going to be very telling, I think, we just had that interview process at the University of Georgia, sort of coordinates an interview process for people who want to be law clerks from all the law schools in Georgia. And we just had that interview process last week. And so I'm hopeful that a lot of those people, just because of timing, people would not have already committed to other jobs. But we have asked for a pay increase for that position just to make it equal with even in line with what an assistant DA would make. That's next year's fiscal budget. We didn't do it in this year.
Okay, so it's next year.
Yes,
Yeah.
the coming year,
Okay.
when we see you again later this year.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Bruce.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As a practical matter, if we were able to give everybody a raise that wanted a raise for the purpose of being competitive, would that not just mean that whoever we're competing with would pay more, and then we pay more, and they pay more, we pay more? And at what point do people take the job because they want to do the job as opposed to the pay? Because the pay, I have 30 years of HR experience, and my experience tells me that raising pay alone does not keep your employees. There has to be something about that job that they just want to do it.
So when you come out of law school, a lot of people want to do that job because they perceive it as the bridge, I guess, from the theory of law school to the practice of law. But the beautiful part is you are also in control of the people's pay who we would be competing with. You see what I'm saying? I mean, y'all also set assistant DAs starting pay and assistant public defenders. We're just trying to be in line with them. We're not trying to compete with a limitless body like you might be in the HR world, where somebody can pay somebody whatever they want to pay. Beautiful part is you would be in charge of that decision making as well to keep those things in line. So that would be my only observation. The altruism, I think there are a lot of people who want that job because they understand that what you learn in law school is theory and it's not practice. But I think that would be as good an answer as I can. In a normal HR world, I would agree with you 100%. I just think this is a little bit of a different scenario, only because we are in sort of entry level, work with the lawyers that are coming out of law school. Thank you, sir.
Okay, we're kind of belaboring the point about salaries, and we don't have that on the agenda today. It'll be in the full budget hearing this year. So we got one more question, I believe. Chairman Burkett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the 386,000. Is that for the 5 $5,000 raise to the judges and all the administrative,
Yes.
okay.
That would include all of the people that are, it's a state position, but for whatever reason, they are county employees, and that would cover those. And I'm going to tell you, yes, that would cover all those people, including staff.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Okay, we certainly appreciate you coming today.
Thank you very much.
I'd be
We have
happy
one
to.
more section. You don't need to, you're good. You understand?
I don't have that highlighted.
It's 9.3.2, additional senior judge funding for special circumstances. And I'll be happy to elaborate.
And I didn't know what the circumstances were,
Well,
but
If I might, sir, this is an example. The Atlantic Circuit has 3 large state prisons. The prison in Tattnall County had a massive deadly riot resulting in 145 defendant cases, 22 of which are murder charges. The judges in that circuit will take care of those cases, but while they're taking care of this huge influx of criminal cases, they need some backup from senior judges. Another example is the Brunswick Circuit, the 3 defendant Arbery murder case that drew national and international coverage, which required a 6-week trial by an out-of-circuit judge. Case was tried by Chatham County Superior Court Judge Timothy Walmsley. He told me he spent 6 weeks in trial, as we all know just from the news coverage, but there were many, many weeks of pretrial motions and hearings that had to be dealt with. Also in my home circuit, the Chattahoochee Circuit, our district attorney was indicted on a number of serious felonies and probably was on his way to conviction, but we don't know that because he decided that he would enter a guilty plea. 7 Superior Court judges in our circuit, because of the close connection on a daily basis with the district attorney's office, felt that we had to recuse. And we were fortunate to have Judge Catherine Lumsden from the Houston Circuit come over and try that case, which was a week plus case, plus the pretrial motions and so forth. So those are the type of circumstances that we're referring to in our request for the $74,568 spelled out in 9.3.2.
and they didn't come directly to mine, but 2 of them in my area, and I know one of the judges very well, and I certainly understand. I thought I said something the other day about Judge Blomley did a great job with that. I watched a lot of it on TV, and I said it was good PR, and one of the other judges said we don't get involved in PR. We just do it professionally. So
That's right. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Prosecuting Attorney's Council. Everybody on the committee get the handout?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Let me introduce, we're on page 4 of y'all's tracking
That's correct.
sheet. Let me introduce to you Chris Jones. Chris is the Chief Financial Officer for the Prosecuting Attorneys Council. So he does all our budget stuff. He'll be doing most of the talking. And I also have Herb Cranford. Herb is the District Attorney for the Coweta Judicial Circuit, which is a 5-county circuit. So I will turn this over to Chris and we'll get right to the point because I know y'all are busy.
Good morning, and we'll skip the JRS adjustments that you referenced earlier. Section 8.1, no request for the Council of Superior Court clerks. So really jumping ahead to the district attorney's program, 8.2.2 is $170,375 Department of Administrative increase for the agency risk premiums. This is just something that was not included in the FY22 base budget based on primarily the liability insurance increases for the current year. Moving to 8.2.3, $150,000 for legal fees for district attorneys in conflict cases. Following suit in prior requests in FY21, there were $884,000 in expenses. Through December of the current year, there have been 68,000. So we're projecting forward, since those cases are still ongoing. There has not been funding in the base budget for that. In addition, not in the original request, but as requested by Brian for this program as well, there was $3.75 million to be included as part of the $5,000 increase for state paid full-time benefit eligible employees in the program. Moving over to the Prosecuting Attorneys Council program, again, skipping the JRS increase. Section 8.3.2 is $13,515. This is a straightforward increase for rent escalation, which is a 3% escalation on the base per year.
It's in the contract, isn't it?
Exactly.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Section 8.3.3, $35,000 for IT help desk support for the Tracker case management system. This is a case management system that's used for district attorneys as well as solicitor generals statewide.
Is this a personnel cost?
This is a contract position cost. Correct.
For 3 months?
Well, this is the contracts, the individual that's part of this larger contract is already on place. And so this $35,000 is to support that. We're already looking at reductions to what they're providing if this isn't provided.
Okay.
Section 8.3.4, $60,000. This is a restoration of travel funds for the Solicitor Generals, and specifically this is training travel funds. This is what's used to allow them to get their CLE as well as their post hours which are required.
And we're going to do this in the fourth quarter of this fiscal year?
I think what we need to do is look at the numbers. We may be able to reduce that number. And if you can just give us a few days to look at the numbers and then get back to Brian. But I think there will be a reduction because we're looking at the number of trainings we have pending and to see what we can do with that.
Yeah, I just didn't know at this late date how you'd be able to schedule training unless you did it yourselves or.
No, well, we do some training ourselves, but I've talked to Chris about this. And I've asked him to go back and look at those numbers and get with Brian, because I do think there'll be a reduction in that number.
Okay.
Okay, section 8.3.5. This is $88,530 annual leave and forfeited leave for two senior level employees. One has already gone, one is retiring actually on Monday. And so we do have, which I've provided Brian, about a $5,000 reduction in that request based on that they're retiring. We have a better projection. And now it's an actual. And lastly, within the Prosecuting Attorneys Council program, again, as a part of the $5,000 increase for all full-time state benefit eligible employees, $254,478 for that program. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the committee members? We appreciate it. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Sure. Judicial Council. It's on page 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It is a pleasure to be back here in a room where I have memories, some fond, some otherwise, and see so many familiar faces. And I appreciate the shot of adrenaline that seeing my friend Chairman Willard on the wall staring across at me gives me on this Thursday morning. I am Charlie Bethel, and I sit on our Supreme Court, but I'm here today to present the budget or the amended budget request of the Judicial Council Administrative Office of the courts. I do want to just take the quick liberty of pointing out for Representative Ballinger what may be relevant to the question she asked earlier, the Superior Court. And that is the Judicial Council, as part of the judicial workload assessment process, does track data associated with caseload, case management, and hours related to productivity. I don't think they track it in order specifically according to your question, but we have the information to the extent that we need to manipulate it. I'm sure that's something that we could explore if that's something in terms of accountability for the resources deployed to productivity. Like I say, that data exists and it is tracked at the Judicial Council level.
Just to your point, I know that there's a way to track basically the judge's docket, but there's no way of tracking who basically adjudicated the individual case. It's my understanding.
I believe that is correct. I guess what I would think is you could marry up the data of senior judge usage. It would be an aggregate number. It would not be, I don't think it would be person specific or judge specific.
Yeah, you couldn't. Yeah.
Okay. That was my question. For the amended 22 budget, I want to start with recognizing the folks that I have with me. I have the Executive Director of the Judicial Council, Administrative Office of the Court, Cynthia Clanton is here. Our new CFO, but a familiar face to you, Malia Wilson is with me. A familiar face to, I think all of you, hopefully, is Tracy Mason, who is our interface with the General Assembly. Another familiar face of the General Assembly is Andrew Zoll, who is our new Budget Director, succeeding Ms. Wilson. The first point I want to make has to do with the Council of Accountability Court judges, and I believe Taylor is here. Just yes, oh yeah, okay. Taylor Jones with the Council of Accountability Court judges. Not reflected on your tracking sheet under 6.1 is a request. The request was not submitted in our budget because the Council of Accountability Court judges believed that the request would be something eligible for ARPA funds, and it is not. It turns out that it is not. It is a restoration of a cut that was sustained during the pandemic of $18,594. I recognize that that's sort of an irregular thing to have not requested it and now be requesting it to you here, but I want to bring it to your attention to the extent the committee and the General Assembly is interested in restoration. That is a true restoration request there, and we apologize for it not being in the budget. Again, it's a mea culpa. Thought it was going to be eligible for federal dollars, that it's not. Your 6.2 and 6.3 reflect our request that there's no change for the Office of Dispute Resolution or Continuing Judicial Education. In your 6.4, there are three different requests. All three are restoration of pandemic cuts. The first, 6.4.1, reflects obviously the largest dollar figure. That is the restoration to the Administrative Office of the Courts, an amount of $569,928. And then both 6.4.2 and 6.4.3 are requests from the Magistrate Court Council and Probate Court Council, respectively, for restoration of funds. I will note, not as a way of making a martyr out of anyone, that both of those councils are witnessing their executive directors pay for their travel and those sort of expenses out of pocket, because there's simply just not a budget without the restorations there.
And then my understanding, I've heard from them. So.
Yeah, I suspect they may have mentioned that once or twice. And then again, your 6.5 and 6.6 reflect no change in the amended budget for either the Judicial Qualifications Commission or the Resource Center.
And I was told that, in 6.4.1 that they were hit the hardest with 15% reduction. So that's pretty significant in terms of budget. I got hit one year 20%, and I know exactly what that entails.
Yes, sir. And this would reflect a 73% restoration of the reduction from the FY21, as we sort of experienced a couple of years. So there are operations that we're having to make critical operational choices in this world. So, and of course, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to do my best.
Hearing none. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Coming back.
No, my
again.
pleasure. Pleasure to be with you. And Mr. Chairman, our court has a case disposition meeting. So without disrespecting the committee or the other presenters, I may slip out, but I want you to know we appreciate what you do.
Well, we have that from time to time ourselves. CJCC. Page 12.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Another old face.
Yeah, I was thinking as Justice Bethel was talking about memories from this room, my first bill, my freshman year, came to then Chairman Ralston's committee. And I remember after the first day, I went back to my mentor and said, what do you do? What kind of advice can you give me on getting a bill out of judiciary non-civil? And my mentor said, when one of my bills gets assigned there, I tell the chairman, no need to call a hearing, and I'll walk away from it.
I've experienced that myself.
So good to see you and your committee in this room, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, good to be with you this morning. I want to call your attention to 30.5. 30.5.1 increased funds for a $5,000 pay increase for full-time benefit eligible state employees. We certainly appreciate OPB and the governor's office for making this available. Retention, as with every other agency, has been a real issue for us. There is a significant issue that we face even with this ad of 5,000 for all full-time benefit eligible state employees. Most of our employees have at least some of their salaries that are grant funded, and some of them, all of their salaries are grant funded. We are given $80,614 for this. In order for us to give every employee the $5,000 raise, it would take $613,500 for us to be able to give every employee at CJCC that $5,000 raise.
613,000 and
$613,500. For us to be able to do that, we would have to come up with $532,000 out of our grant funds, which you all have probably been hearing from some of your domestic violence shelters, sexual assault centers, child advocacy centers, already facing 36% cuts because of reduced grant funding. It would be practically impossible for us to find any federal grant funds to make that happen. 30.5.2 is an add of 4.6 million to our crime victims emergency fund. This is a critical add, and we appreciate very much the governor's office and OPB for adding this 4.6 million. The Crime Victims Compensation Program, as you're probably aware, provides up to $25,000 per victim per victimization for victims of violent crimes. Over the last 10 years, we've paid $199,499,843 in victims compensation in the state of Georgia. We began to notice in fiscal year 18 that the revenues for this fund, which come primarily from the $9 probation fee, was not keeping up with the expenditures. We met with DCS, had some conversations about the fund at that time. They took some steps to assure that all the collected funds were being remitted to CJCC. That closed the gap somewhat. We also came to you last year with a plan to reimburse medical expenses on the workers' compensation schedule. That becomes effective July the 1st. That will also reduce that gap somewhat. And then we work to support the federal fix on the VOCA fund. Those measures would have closed the gap on the crime victims compensation or the crime victims emergency fund. And we felt really good about that. The pandemic has created some tremendous challenges for us. We lost $12.4 million in revenues over the last 2 years in reductions of the $9 fee that we receive from probationers. We are going to lose, it looks like, almost $7 million this year. That's putting us at about $19 million in revenues that we've lost during the course of the pandemic.
And that's because they're not holding courts and they're not putting anybody on probation, so nobody's paying the fee.
which has now put our Crime Victim Emergency Fund in jeopardy. We are now, as a result of that loss of $19 million, we are now looking at a situation where if there's not an additional infusion, and this 4.6 million goes a long ways, but we will become insolvent late 2024, early 2025 without additional revenues. We have asked for ARPA funds, and we are hopeful that we'll be able to see that. But it may be time to start having a conversation as well about whether that $9 fee is the appropriate way to fund our Crime Victim Emergency Fund, or if we need to be looking at other ways to help provide the revenues for that fund as well.
Just one clarification. You said 2024, 2025. With the infusion of funds here, that would get us to 24 to 25. In the current scenario, we're looking at insolvency in December of 2023 if we do not have the injection.
We have any questions from committee members? Chairman Ballinger.
Thank you, Director, and I appreciate all the work that you do. As somebody who y'all paid my check at one point in time over at the CJCC, I'm really appreciative and know the hard work that you do. It seems to me, though, that it would be cyclical. So you have a case, you have, a crime victim, and you have a defendant, that pays the $9, and you have a victim to which you're paying out funds out of the emergency funds. Explain to me why. I mean, have y'all seen a substantial decrease in claims? I mean, it seems like there should be some, mutual decrease, I guess.
So we've actually seen an increase in victims of violent crime. That's not a surprise with the increase in violent crime that we've seen over the last couple of years. The overwhelming majority of the $9 fee that comes in through probation is not from violent offenders.
Mhm.
It is from nonviolent offenders. So there's not that direct correlation. If we were only getting that $9 from violent offenders, that wouldn't even be a drop in the bucket for what we needed. That's I've seen the percentage. It seems like it's less than 10%, if I remember correctly, that comes in actually from violent offenders. One of the things, Senate Bill 105 that passed last year, and I have been a supporter all along of criminal justice reform, and I still am. But some of the things that we've done over the last 6 or 8 years with criminal justice reform, what we did last year was Senate Bill 105, provides a pathway for those probationers to get off probation sooner. So as the number of probationers that are under active supervision continues to decrease in the state of Georgia, obviously that $9 fee continues to decrease along with that as well.
Okay. Thank you. I'll circle back up.
Thank you.
Chairman Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to tag along on that question. So, and we can talk offline because I need to get more familiar with this fund. So for a victim to claim, does there have to be an adjudication in the case?
No, there doesn't. There has to be a crime committed. So even if they are unable to identify the perpetrator and no arrest is made, as long as there is the evidence that a crime occurred, then that victim is eligible for crime victims compensation.
And it's up to 25,000, you said?
Up to 25,000 per event. And there's a breakdown on that, up to 15,000 for medical, up to 6,000 for funeral expense, up to 10,000 for loss of support, up to 10,000 for loss of income, up to 1,500 for crime scene sanitation, up to 3,000 for counseling services. Forensic medical exams are also paid out of that, up to 1,000, and forensic interviews are also paid out of that fund up to 200.
Thank you.
Representative Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Director Neal.
Good morning.
Can you let us know how the funding is working presently with respect to our domestic violence shelters and our sexual assault centers? My understanding is that some of the funding from the Federal Violence Against Women Act is either going to go away or be greatly diminished. And really what I'm asking is, do our centers have the resources they need to take care of the populations that they serve?
I'll start with that answer first, that question first, and the answer to that is no, they do not have. Over the course of the last 4 years, we've seen our VOCA funds coming from the federal government decrease by 68%, which is pretty significant, especially when you consider that most of our domestic violence shelters, sexual assault centers, our other partners, most of them are funded at 70, 75, 80% from these federal grant monies. Last year, we have been very conservative in our approach through the years. So we had some reserves that fortunately we were able to absorb those cuts initially. Last year was the first year that the cuts became so significant that we were not able to fully fund with the reserves that we had. We reached out to OPB, the governor's office, and we were able to receive $14 million in the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Fund, which we're very thankful for. That filled the gap. We had, I think it was a 15% cut that we made last year in the VOCA fund, but that CSEF fund filled that gap, and we were able to continue funding. That's a one-year fund. That's gone. That's not going to be available for this coming fiscal year. In addition to that, we're going to be looking at about a 20% cut in our VOCA fund, in addition to the loss of that 14 million. So the effective, what that effectively does for our partners is has them looking at the potential, the very real possibility, the probability, if we don't get ARPA funds, the probability that they'll be facing a 36% cut this next year.
Thank you for that. And my understanding in speaking with a number of the individuals that run those shelters is while many of them, if not all, are 501c3s and fundraise, the fundraising atmosphere has been very, very difficult because they can't have in-person events and everything else, all the same challenges. So it's really a double whammy in terms of the revenues. There's less from the government and there's less that they've been able to secure through private fundraising too, which presents a really big problem.
I think that's pretty common across the board for our partner agencies.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we dealt with this some last year, and they were in crisis mode last year. And, you know, I worked at CJCC for 5 years, and I've been to just about every one of the shelters, except for the ones that have come online since 2000, and know a lot of those people. And I know where their heart is. And when you see the people that they help, I mean, you can't help but get emotional about it. It's
and Mr. Chairman, if I may, where this really has the most impact is going to be our rural areas. While fundraising has been a problem, it is even more of a problem in those rural areas for them to be able to raise funds. And if we have to do the 36% cut that it looks like we may without the ARPA funds, we're looking at probably 400 positions that will be eliminated across the state. And those positions are the people on the front line that's providing the direct services to those victims. So there'll be some pretty significant impact if that happens.
any further questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Office of Highway Safety. Page 19. It's not coming. Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'll introduce myself again. I'm Alan Poole, the Director of Highway Safety. Along with me, my Deputy Director, Jimmy Sumner, and my Director of Driver's Education, Josh Turner. Thank you all again for allowing me to be here this morning to present. I'm going to jump right into the meat and potatoes, Mr. Chairman. We want to thank the governor for the opportunity to fund us with a pay raise, but let me just bring to your attention that $40,000 that you see in 39-10-1, that $40,585, that will only be significant for 7 people, 8 people, 8 people. We have a total staff
Is that because of grant funding?
because
Right.
of the grant funding. We've got 8 people that's paid by that $40,000. We have a remaining 18 people that wouldn't have opportunity to partake of that $5,000.
What would be the total cost?
The total cost of that, Mr. Chairman, would be $89,415 needed to give those additional 18 people the proposed governor's raise. And if you look further down, 39-10.2, I bring to your attention the cut that we've already received, that $424,000, Mr. Chairman, is based on the fact that that money was calculated part of what the whole entire budget for the Office of Highway Safety, which I've argued for the last 3 years. And this year, I think you all heard my plea that we're segregating the driver's education because that was a surcharge. But you couldn't use it in the cut that we received from the proposed governor's cut.
But it also reflects negatively this year because they haven't been holding court. You're not getting any funding.
That's exactly right, Mr. Chairman. So we're looking at a negative of over $424,000. Reason being, there hadn't been any citation written, and that money has dropped significantly. And so therefore we got a gap, and we're going to potentially lose over 1,000 applicants for driver's ed. Can you speak to that, Josh, Mr. Chairman, if I yield to Josh?
Sure.
Sure.
I'm gonna turn the mic around.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The scholarships are valued at $500 a piece. However, not all providers charge that $500 rate. They charge us what they charge the public. So it's going to be between 800 and maybe 1,100 scholarships that we estimate. We have already started to reduce our allocations from the 385 that we traditionally award each month down to 220, and our providers have already noticed that reduction due to this cut of 424,000.
You know, I got to be able to double it to bring it partially back up to where it was when the flow was first originated, because only certain people are, you know better than I, only certain people are eligible now.
That's right. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to impress on the committee, we've got documentation where we have proved that driver's ed does work, and the quality of drivers that we put on the road, once they go through our training, we can see a difference and an impact versus somebody that's not being trained. And so we hope that we can impress on the committee. If you look favorably towards helping us restore to keep from losing so many scholarship, it would be greatly appreciated.
Well, the parental part always got me, and you know, where they have their at-home type of training, and then all the parent has to do is sign off and said, I've put them on the road so many hours. And we all know that some people do and some people don't.
Yes, sir.
And I think that some of those people that don't probably end up with some statistics somewhere in our traffic accident counts.
And just one other point, Mr. Chairman, we want to impress on the committee, those numbers are headed up, they're headed the wrong way. And it's imposed on us, if we do whatever we can to change those numbers. We've seen those numbers increase for the first time since 2007. They've already reached epidemic levels of over 1,800 fatalities. And we want to impress on the committee, if you could consider helping restore that money so we can do a better job of what we're here to do. But I'll yield to any questions from the committee. Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, we're good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a quick question. I just want to make sure I understood this right. So with the $5,000 dollar pay increase, Mr. Commissioner, you're saying you're only allocating 40,000 for 8 people because you have funds elsewhere that you're paying for the 5,000 for the remainder of the year? Is that what I understood or no?
No, sir. We've got 8 people that's paid through state funds, which is the $40,000 would cover that. We don't have the funds to cover the additional 18 slots that's available because those are funded through grant from the federal side of it.
So we would need to put that in here for them to get that, right?
If
For
they're gonna, if
everybody.
they're gonna get the raise, it has to be put in there.
Okay. All right.
It's just like the other case we had with the CJCC.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So those 8, I'm gonna follow up on Representative Burchett's thing. Those, what is the average salary of those 8?
Those 8, an average is where myself, myself and the deputy, we're funded through that P&A, which is us 8 people. The average, what'd you say, maybe $80,000 on average?
Pretty safe number, yes.
All right, that's state funded.
Yes, sir.
All right, now the 18, what is the average salary of the 18 that are paid through the grants?
I'd say 60, probably 60 to 65,000.
But they are more, they're not administrative.
You're correct, sir. They're not administrative.
Are we, may I ask another question, Mr. Speaker?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman? The federal funds, are they being reduced or we have a future outlook that they may disappear?
Well, Representative Green, we've seen potential loss of federal funds because of House Bill 356. The 356, Rob? The Senate Bill 356, where it's a possibility that they will allow you, I believe, to touch your phone if you're at an intersection or stoplight, which will in turn could potentially reduce some federal funding from the Fed side.
Okay.
And already, sir, we leave about $3 million on the table that we could draw down because we're not in compliance with.
The language of the hands-free law is such that the minimum fine for federal funding is $25, but the way the law is written, even though the intent is 50, it says up to 50. So legally, the feds say it can be less than 25. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
let me ask you this as we conclude, those grant funded people, these local law enforcement officers that you typically hire that work in the different regions across the state?
Yes, sir, they're part of it.
That's what I thought. Okay. No more questions. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
FEMA Homeland Security. Page 11.
You got a telephone in the back.
Morning.
Morning, sir. How are you?
Just tell everybody who you are and who you represent, so everybody that's online can identify you.
Yes, sir. Chris Stallings, Director of GEMA Homeland Security. I've got to my left, Michael Nix. He's the Executive Director of Georgia Emergency Communications Authority, and the Deputy Director, Mark Sexton, who can answer some of the more in-depth questions if we have some, sir.
Okay. And I think yours is going to be pretty easy.
I hope so. It will be on page 11 if you want to follow along for the full 30 seconds of our briefing. But as you see here, we have some allocations that we've requested, and then the funds provided by the state for the $5,000 increase for full-time benefit eligible is $144,885, and then the one-time funds for some retirement and leave payouts are $91,119. I think we sit in the same boat that all our other grant funded.
Right. How many people you have retiring?
That number there is based on 2 former members of the executive staff.
That's a pretty good payout. I've done it twice, and mine didn't come near that range, and I was making more than the governor was. And Seems like a lot of money.
Yes, sir. And that's just, that's how it failed this time. It always feels good whenever, because you see the number that we get.
Well, one of
from
them's
the
deputy
state.
director, isn't
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
it? Yeah. Any questions from committee members? Chairman Green, I think we missing Al Williams, but you.
Oh, I'm
not as
taking up
much
the
since you've
slack.
Taking his place.
I'm taking up the slack. No, mine is one of compliments. Thank y'all for what you do for the state. Thank you for being our area was so hit by storms and hurricanes and everything, and y'all have been so responsive. And thank you, Michael, for always being there to answer my calls and working with me on these issues. So thank you very much.
No further questions?
If I can make one more
Sure.
statement about our gap, just so we're all on the same page. We're much like CJCC, where
Grant.
our concern is that we're going to have to withdraw funds from either local emergency management agencies or other state agencies that we fund, because our grants are solely based on the population. We can't go back and ask for more. We just got to have more babies or something.
And you probably need to recalculate so we can adjust for that, because I know there are grant positions there.
Yes, sir. We've got some
yeah.
grant positions, and the problem, echoing the question you asked for GOHS, is ours is completely different because we have so many pots of money that can only pay this
For certain
lane
things,
and this
silos.
lane. Yes,
Yep.
sir. They're very, very siloed based. And so just for the committee, we've got about a $700,000 gap for amended fiscal year 22, and then around about $670,000 gap for fiscal year 23 that we'll be trying to find. So
Well, we appreciate the job you do. Having done it myself, I was in a different era with different constraints and different excitable items, but
Yes, sir.
right after 9/11. But
I think you had a little better budget than I did with your Homeland Security.
well, I was getting $60-70 million a year in
Yes,
Homeland
sir.
Security grants. Of
Yes,
course, they weren't, they were specified where they could be used. We
That's
couldn't
exactly
use many of them in-house. The overwhelming majority of them went to local
That's exactly
governments,
right.
and plenty of state agencies had plans for the state money too. So,
Yes, sir.
but we appreciate it. We're adjourned.
Yes, sir. Thank you.